Here we go. Hot slachel. Good afternoon, hot Lushootseed. It's good to see you guys logging in, although we can't see each other face to face. For those who didn't get to join yesterday, Natosha Gobin seedsda, Sdohobsh chud chadas dokwal buf, chud chadas poyalapabsh, chud chadas sak buf I soyat buf, to all chud Doflala. Gobin Young Tibadali Gwed de Ishid, Hill Price T Skoyali Gwed de Ishid, Abs Badbarat Chada Quit Salalats, Utech Dov Chach T Isu Staltalith, Dov Chawatil Chud Chada, Dov Squad Chud Chada, Dov Sugusalik at T Doflēšucid. My name is Natosha Gobin. I am of Snohomish, Snoqualmie, Puyallup, Sauk-Suatal, and Skagit descent, a member of the Tulalip tribes. My father's side of my family are the Gobin and Young families, and my mother's side of my family are the Hill and Price families. I am a proud mother of 5 children, and we are also raising 2 nephews in our home. So we've got 7 busybodies in our home along with us. I am a student first, continuously learning our ancestral language. I'm also a speaker and a teacher. I am currently teaching or prepping for teaching at Marysville Pilchuck. I will have a couple classes up there. Raising my hands to each and every one of you, whether you're coming in on the webinar or you're watching this on Facebook Live. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to review what we did in lesson 1. So in lesson 1, we were talking about the layout of our territory. So what we're doing this week is we are learning the names of the tribes and their river systems, talking about the connection to those important river systems, water systems, and how that keeps us interconnected here. The first thing that we had to do is we had to look at this map, a traditional map that we see that typically has the compass, north, south, east, and west. And we've got to indigenize it. We've got to turn it to the way that our ancestors would view the land. So when we look at these maps, we look at things as going upland, up towards the mountains, where we would go hunting, where we would harvest berries, or going downriver and going out into the saltwater, where we would go fishing and harvest any of the sea life that we would utilize. So each of these river systems, all of those rivers that you drive over while you're traveling down I-5, we're used to seeing those in English. Now we're going to be learning the Lushootseed names for each of those river systems and the tribes that are connected to those areas. So the first place that we went over is we went over number this first river system, Skagit. We hear it today as Skagit. Our ancestors pronounced it Skagit. Skagit. That Q comes from way back here. It's called the Indian K because that sound comes from back here. And in order to get this sound out, it has to travel through your mouth. So it's a very airy sound. Skagit. Skagit. The second river systems belong to our relatives, Sauk-Buh, Sauk-Buh. You'll notice this little question mark without the dot. That's a glottal stop. It's an abrupt stop or a pause. So it's a pause if it's in middle of a word or an abrupt stop at the end of a word. Sauk-Buh, Sauk-Buh, and Soyat-Buh, Soyat-Buh. And right here we just have Soyat. So the Sauk-Buh, Soyat-Buh, this is our Sauk-Suatal relatives. Then we have our relatives in the territory here. This is the Swinomish Channel. Swadubsh. Swadubsh. And this is the first one that we went over to talk about the sound change. So there was a sound change that took place. Pre-contact, our ancestors would have pronounced the words with N's and M's. We no longer do that today. There was a sound change, whether it be an influence of English or whatever else took place. We now pronounce those words with D's and B's. So instead of using an N, we pronounce it with a D. Instead of using an M, we pronounce it with a B. And as you'll notice in some of our traditional stories, there are some of our ancestors who refuse to go through that change. So we call it raven talk if we end up continuing to use those N's and M's. So swadubsh was previously pronounced swanumsh, swanumsh, which is closer to how you see it written in English, swinamish, swanumsh, swadubsh. And that refers to their territory right here, which is at the lower end of the Skagit River. Gwud means down or low, and it refers to going downriver and being right in this territory, Swadubsh. Okay, Bos, number 4, Stolaquabsh. This territory right here, Stolaquabsh. Stoluk means river. And then this Ubsh and Absh means group of people. Now, we also talked about how the K raised W and the G raised W were interchangeable. So you would see them changing, alternating from a K raised W or a G raised W. So at the time that this was documented into English, you would have heard the ancestors say Stolagwamsh, 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 which brings it closer to how you see Stilagwamish, Stolagwamsh. Salats, Salats. This territory right here, the territory we are in, Sdohobsh, Sdohobsh, Sdohobsh. And at the time that it was documented into English, you would have seen or heard Snohomsh, Snohomsh. So there's the change of the N to D and the M to B, Snohomsh. And that's why we see in English, Snohomish, Snohomish, Snohomsh. Okay, Yalats, our relatives up here in this territory, Sdoqualbu, Sdoqualbu, Sdoqualbu. At the time that the word was documented into English, you would have heard Snoqualmu, Snoqualmu, Snoqualmu. And that is the Snoqualmie, our Snoqualmie relatives. All right, we're going to move on and we're going to learn the words for the remaining territories and river systems. Let's see if I can get this slide to go. Let's go. There we go. Okay. So after Yalats, we have Oaks, 7. This territory, which if you guys are familiar with looking at this map, although it's turned on its side, this is in what we know today as the Dx၀area, the Seattle area. And this is our relatives, Dwabsh, Dwabsh. Nuhnawamsh could have been one of the ways that it was pronounced, Dwamsh. So this has a combination of the change. So this is where you can really see that there was still the change taking place where there's actually a D used along with an M. So Dwamish, this is our Dwamish relatives right here in this territory. Dwamish, Dwamsh. All right, moving on to Takachi. Takachi, we have buckle shoes, buckle shoes, buckle shoes. Okay. Buckle shoes. At the time that it was documented, you would have heard muckle shoes, muckle shoes. And this letter at the end of this word, this is a barred L. It's like a slurred L. So the best way to describe it is if you put your tongue on the roof of your mouth behind your two front teeth and then blow air out one side. So it's like a slurred L. Muckle shoes, muckle shoes. This is our muckleshoot relatives. With these sounds, another thing we discussed is the desire to try to connect an English letter to represent the sound that you hear in Lushootseed, and they just do not match up. So today you hear muckleshoot because they tried to put a T at the end because there was no way for them to capture that sound. All right, Huol, number 9. Our relatives, Poyalapabsh, Poyalapabsh. So the people at the bend of the river, or this was, had to do with how many bends there were in the river, Poyalapabsh. And for this one, they just, with some of the place names, the Absh or the Bu or the Mu or the Amsh, those endings may have just been taken off for that territory when they documented it. So this is Puyallup, 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 right here in this territory. And then moving down to Olob, Olob, this territory. Dofsquali Absh, Dofsquali Absh. At the time that the name was documented, Nofsqualiamsh, Nofsqualiamsh. And this is another good example of how that amsh was dropped. Nofsquali, Nofsquali. And if you're familiar with down here in this territory, this is our Nisqually relatives, Nofsquali. That means towards. Dofs is a directional term, towards. Squally, squally is grass. So duh is directional to or towards. Squally is grass. In that grassy area, that plain, you know, the big grassy area, right when you drop down on the freeway, and you see that big area, that is our one of the most prominent places for our Nofsquali relatives. So towards the grassy area, Nofsquali, Dosqualiabsh. All right, and for the next 2 territories, we don't have them numbered on here. This map was created to talk about the river systems. So although they don't have a river system, we still need to talk about our Soquabsh relatives, our Suquamish relatives. So at the time that it was documented, they would have heard Soquamsh, Suquamish. So our Suquamish relatives. And then number 12, Squaxsadabsh. Squaxsadabsh, Squaxsanamsh, Soquabsh, Squaxsanamsh. All right. So Squaxin, Squaxin, Squaxin. So that's another example where that or that absh was taken off. Squaxin, Squaxin. All right, so that takes us through all of these. I'm going to go back and let's try to make it through all of our territories. Okay. Oh, Skajit. Skajit. Sali, Sakbu, Soyatbu, Hliu, Swadubsh, Swadubsh, Bos, Stolaquabsh, Stolaquabsh, Salats, Stohobsh, Stohobsh, Yolats, Stoqualbu, Stoqualbu. Oaks, Duf Dawabsh, Duf Dawabsh, Hachi, Buckleshoot, Buckleshoot, Qual, Poyalapabsh, Poyalapabsh, Olob, Duf Squaliabsh, Duf Squaliabsh, Olobitich, oh, Soquabsh, Soquabsh, Olobiti Sali, Squach Sadubsh, Squach Sadubsh. And I do want to make note that there are some of our relatives that have alternate names for their groups of people. The words that we chose were to help you understand what the words were in Lushootseed and how translating them into English, that's how we see them on common signs within these territories, whether it's a river system or whether it's a sign that's directing you towards that territory. That's why we chose these words. All right, so we're gonna narrow in because we have time. We're going to narrow into our territory here and have a little discussion on the word Doflala. Doflala. So there tends to be the misunderstanding of this territory. Doflala. Doflala mean this first part, do, is that directional prefix to or towards. Lel means far, lil. Op is a lexical suffix for bottom. And this refers to when people are traveling into our territory, when people would come to this area, they would come to Doflala, they would come to Tulalip Bay, and that bay is named because of the sandbar. So for those of you who've been out to Tulalip Bay, and when the tide goes out and you see the sandbar, you can't see that sandbar at high tide. So the bay was named Doflala because you would have to go far towards the bottom of the sandbar in order to get to the inside of the bay to land your canoes. So after the signing of the Point Elliott Treaty, when the Tulalip Reservation was established and the tribes were put here on the reservation was named after the bay. So it was named after this bay, Doflala, which means far towards the bottom. And that's one of the words that you'll see, Doflala, you'll see that on signs, or you'll see that some people have it on the back of their jacket. And if you don't know, if you've never been taught how to pronounce it, it can be confusing to look at. So let's look at this right here. This X-rays W, I think we talked about it yesterday. This is like blowing out a candle. There's no English letters that you can put together to make that sound. So that makes a sound like you're blowing out a candle. Do, do, Doflala, Doflala, Tulalip, Doflala. All right, what we're going to get to, and I'm gonna have you, I want you guys to take a good look at this picture and let this territory right here, you know, take a mental picture of it, because a traditional story that we're going to share tomorrow is going to help you look at this and you will finally see something that you won't be able to unsee, and be able to get one of the teachings from one of our traditional stories. The last thing I'm going to do that I didn't do yesterday because I forgot is here is a list of resources. If you have any questions, if you have any requests, you can reach out to our manager, Michelle Balaget. Her email address is right here. You can either send her an email or you can give her a call. We have an amazing website that has a ton of resources, and that's tulaliplushootseed.com. And we are also grateful that Tulalip TV has the videos that you can also find on our website, but you can always go to tulaliptv.com and you can search Lushootseed and it'll bring up some of the videos that we have on our website. Tulalip TV also has an abundance of history and culture videos that I highly encourage you to go and check out. So I got to plug them as well. But that's going to conclude us for today's lesson, lesson 2. Once again, I raise my hands to each and every one of you. Thank you to the participants, the 7 participants that logged in on our webinar. And I haven't been able to look at Facebook Live, but I hope you guys were able to participate in this short lesson on Facebook Live. The video will be saved and shared on Facebook for those who have access to Facebook. And for those who don't have access to Facebook, the webinar link will be shared as well. So if you want that link emailed to you, you can reach out to Michelle Balaget. And you can also check up on tulaliplushootseed.com. Our wonderful tech, Dave Cinco, will be uploading the link to the video recording of this webinar. You just got to ignore the first couple of seconds while I'm trying to get everything going. But that will be up there for you as well. So I did have one question in the webinar. How long has it been since we did this? This is the first time that we're doing this in a webinar format. During COVID, we did community lessons, and we hope to bring that online option available. We also look forward to a time when we can gather again in person and offer some in-person family classes. I do got to give a shout out to all of the language teachers. We have been working hard to develop the curriculum, redevelop the curriculum that is taught at the Betty J. Taylor Early Learning Academy. And next year, we will hopefully be reaching every grade level within Marysville School District. So we do have Marie and Nikki who are teaching at Totem. Michelle Miles is teaching at Heritage. I will be teaching at MP, and then we will have Marie and Nikki at Quilceda Tulalip Elementary. And we do try to reach out to other schools as they request us and welcome us into their schools to do any type of outreach. But I could keep going and going and going. I want to keep this short and sweet. I hope you guys enjoyed learning the rest of the names for our territories. We'll review those again tomorrow before I tell you a traditional story of Swayok, the basket lady. So that's your little heads up, the basket lady. So with that, I'm leaving you with this picture again, so you guys can check that out. I look forward to joining all of you again tomorrow to finish off with telling a story. Goodbye, friends. Take care.